What's up, guys? My name is Fari, and I build systems that remove bottlenecks within businesses. And I've been documenting my builds for 111 days now, going up to 365. And in today's video, we're going to be going through why I film each and every single day and why I believe this will matter in the next 10 years. So, we're going to be going through the problem, what the actual problem that I am trying to solve, and also create a solution for, and also the build, my solution to basically combat the problem as well, and also the competitive advantage that ultimately forms as a result of this build, and as well as the first principles layer that I like to think about, just basically to close this off. So if we jump straight into the problem, we can see that most people talk about their big dreams, but there's no receipts, there's no proof, or there's no social proof that ultimately backs up what it is that they have to say. And especially in the African context, ambitious ideas are written off as delusion unless they're proven. One of my big goals that I always normally just speak about and tell the people that are around me, they believe that, hey, one day I am actively gonna pursue this goal and achieve it. And it's somewhat of a goal that people look at me and say this person is delusional. If I were to tell it to someone that is not close to my circle or truly understands what it is that I'm building, that is where the delusional perspective comes in. They say, hey, you're delusional, what are you thinking of building? We have so many big problems. Why would you focus on that specific goal that you want to build rather than the problems that are in front of you? And yes, that is true 100%, but I believe that keeping that big picture vision for myself in terms of what we're building with these videos, and also the grand vision for myself as well, ultimately keeps the mission alive, and also allows me to push myself a lot further. Because without a log, you can't prove how hard you actually worked until you finally make it. And I want to make sure that these builds, these logs that I'm having for 365 days is ultimately having all of my wins, all of my failures, all of the days that I don't feel like working, or even just uploading these videos. Because yes, all of that may seem like there's no point in doing it, but I know that in the next 10 years it will ultimately matter. And if it doesn't matter for anyone else, the most important thing is that it's going to matter for me. And I think I want to be in a place where I'm just building for the younger version of myself, and as well as the future version. And how am I able to think about this, I think will ultimately come as a result of building through this documentation, basically documenting how I'm thinking, how I'm failing, how I'm winning, and also each and every single thing that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, because I know that is ultimately going to compound into the future. And through this compounding modes that will ultimately be formed, I know it's going to create a lot of value in terms of the clarity that I will be able to form personally in terms of my thinking, and also building that proof. Because one day, let's say one day in the next 10 years, I ultimately build this big thing, and then ultimately people know me from that specific point in time. I want them to ultimately understand the time that it took, and the failures and the wins, every single thing that ultimately led up to that point. And that point is today, that point was yesterday, that point is from today into the next 365 videos that I may upload. And ultimately, until we get to the grand vision, I want this to be a log that ultimately documents how I'm thinking. From the beginning, I was stumbling and not saying the words that I was able to say, or even just being able to articulate myself in the manner that I am today. And ultimately showing that, I know, is ultimately going to be the reason why into the future, that proof, or that that proven track record for how I've been able to build 365 days non-stop, posting each and every single day, whether it's a good video, whether it's a bad video, just ultimately focusing on the result, which is ultimately posting each and every single day. And I want to make sure that everyone understands into the future how hard this actively is, because each and every single day I don't feel like recording, I don't feel like I need to do certain things. But the most important thing is ultimately showing up, and showing up each and every single day, I know, is the number one thing that the people at a super high level are doing each and every single day. And if I want to get to that level, why can't I do it today? And why can't I set myself a goal of posting 365 days, because if I truly wanted and I truly want to reshape industries and I want to change people's lives and also help them as well, how am I then going to be able to do that if I'm not even able to do 365 days? Or just set hard goals that ultimately push me as a person to keep on innovating, keep on iterating each and every single day. And I think that is the modes that I ultimately want to take, basically building that proven track record each and every single day. And also another thing that I've been thinking about recently with these daily videos is ultimately rapid iteration. So each and every single day is rapidly iterating on my ideas, my thoughts, and each and every single way that I'm building these videos as well, the format. So if I'm changing one thing in each and every single video, then I'm rapidly iterating towards the grand vision. It may not seem apparent to everyone else, but internally and also subconsciously within my mind, I'm ultimately able to see how I'm compounding my clarity and ways of thinking that ultimately is going to get me to the grand vision where we're ultimately redefining industries and having massive amounts of impact. And I know for a fact that we're ultimately going to get there, but the question then becomes, how do we use these videos as part of our leverage mode that ultimately takes us there? And we've been uploading for 111 days, which is ultimately insane for me to even think about. And I had a conversation today and I was telling one of my friends that, hey, I've been posting each and every single day. It's not always been the easiest. It's been hard because there's been days where I've stumbled, but I've still kept posting anyway and just showing up each and every single day. And I know that through that is ultimately going to build the moat that drives what it is that I want to achieve for me and also for everyone else that will be part of the mission in the end. But that ultimately comes as a result of the build, which is ultimately my solution, which ultimately means, like I said, the daily videos are real-time documentation of my thinking. Each day is a brick. Together they form a wall of proof, basically building the compounding leverage in terms of my thinking, also my articulation, and also documenting to show the good, the bad, the ugly as well, and also thinking of it in terms of a training montage in real life. So except it being just a 1 day or 3 minute video, it is 365 days. 365 days of this training montage that is ultimately building the compounding moat within me subconsciously and also externally, basically showing what it is that I'm actively building on a day-to-day and how I'm actively thinking about that as well, which ultimately means 365 days of data points. And through those data points, I know that one nugget, even just one video, if one video helps one person, that is ultimately a win for me. But I know the deeper I get into these videos, I know for a fact that I am not going to give up no matter what, that I'm just going to keep on going, keep on hitting the nail in the wall. Even if it's boring most of the time, I'm just going to make sure that I'm learning a lot more and also just being a person of value and creating as much value as I possibly can, because I've come too far to quit today. 111 days is a lot, and starting over or missing a day or two is ultimately it ultimately feels like starting over again. So I don't ever want to do that. I just want to make sure that we're ultimately pushing the needle forward each and every single day. I'm not the same person that started 111 videos ago. I am a completely different person, but that is ultimately the point, because the other day I was watching a video that I posted and it was I was cringing to be honest. I couldn't believe that was me in the beginning, and anyone watched that, but that's a story for another day. So ultimately we get then back into the competitive advantage, while this basically comes back or ties back to that most people don't have the discipline to ship for 100 days plus in consecutively. So each and every single day they don't have the the discipline to ship each and every single day for 100 days, and that is ultimately the competitive advantage that I'm building for myself, because I realize that sometimes you realize that the things that you're doing is hard for someone else. So how do you then take it up a notch, or ask the questions within yourself to ask, hey, if everyone is not able to do this, why don't I do it, but do it times two, so that it ultimately hires the barrier of entry for what it is that you're doing, because anyone can copy, and I am a big proponent of this, that anyone can copy what it is that you're doing, but no one can match the level of execution that you have. And also, you're the only person that came up with this idea, for example, that has the unique perspective, of life experiences that you ultimately formed throughout your years in order to come up with this idea. And only you can be able to execute it in the manner that you see through your worldview and your experiences. And this ultimately means, for me, when I hit bigger missions, I'll have undeniable proof that it wasn't luck. Simply through this, I'm building the execution mode, that each and every single day I'm just gonna show up no matter what, whether I feel like it, whether I don't feel like it. And that is ultimately gonna be what sets me apart, and also builds the proof as well, because it shows investors, partners, and even my future self that this was the grind, and this was the base. This was the base from where it all started, and I should never ever forget how hard it ultimately took to get to 111 days of shipping each and every single day. Because for me, when I started, I just wanted to do 30 days, and then I realized that, hey, no one really remembers the guy that did 30 days and just quit, but they remember the guy that did 100 days. But then when I got to 100 days, I was like, hey, no one ever remembers the guy that did 100 days and quit, so let's kick it up a notch and do 365 days. And that ultimately has led us here, that we're just somewhat in the coast phase. If you watch rocket videos, when the rocket is in coast phase, that is ultimately what I am taking the approach of now, not focusing on this is day 112, this is day 113, but mostly let's just ship each and every single day, because that is the most important thing. The result is the most important thing, and we need to make sure that we're just pushing forward each and every single day, because the result is ultimately what's going to build the grand vision into the future. And for myself, it's ultimately going to show that this was the grind and this was the base that ultimately kickstarted everything. And I will ultimately be super proud of myself as well, looking back at these videos in 10 years and looking how hard I ultimately pushed and made sure that each and every single day I'm sharpening my thinking, sharpening my clarity, sharpening my reasoning, and also digging a lot deeper in terms of the layers that I'm ultimately building. But that ultimately means taking the first principles approach. And if you know me, I am a big fan of using first principles thinking as a mental model for your life, for my personal life, and also the way that I think about business as well, and also just think about every single problem that I solve. Because with first principles, you're able to then understand things from its core and then ultimately reason up from there, and then that ultimately allows you to solve bigger and bigger problems. So I'm formulating now so that into the future that I can also just take it up a notch. But that ultimately means that the first principles layer for this specific instance is ultimately looking at the elite outcomes ultimately come as a result of the compounding plus proof of work and also focus. Because I know that one of the most important things is focus and also proof of work. If I can show focus, proof of work, and also compound that as well, that ultimately builds the elite level outcomes that everyone thinks is an overnight success. And I know that through a lot of just sheer focus and just working each and every single day, I know that we're ultimately gonna push and get there. And that is something that I want to do personally, and also push the team as well. My team also knows that if they come and they want to work with me, they know that they can see the level of execution that is required. Shipping each and every single day, no matter how we feel, how we interact, that ultimately means that we're just pushing towards the result, and nothing else truly matters other than creating value and also producing the result. But that means that documentation isn't just content, it's ultimately leverage. It's training me so that when the SpaceX level missions call, I'm already conditioned. And if you know what that means, what I'm referring to, the SpaceX level mission calls, then you have a hint to what I was saying in the beginning of the grand vision as well. So yeah, so basically this is how I am thinking about filming each and every single day, and why I believe it will matter. This is an updated version from a previous video that I did a couple videos back, because each and every single day I get new ideas, I get new ways to think about things that I want to share, and that ultimately gives me a mode to reflect and also improve on a day to day. So Yeah, so if you guys, like I said, if you guys ultimately just want to connect with me, links are in the description: X, LinkedIn, Instagram. And make sure to check out the newsletter that I recently just rolled out. The first post should be live by now, by the time of watching this, and if not, it will ultimately be live tomorrow. So if you guys check that out, that would mean the world to me. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check those out again, and I will see you guys in the next video.